Greetings and a very warm welcome to the launch show of Lapsed Gamer Radio, a forthcoming podcast about video games which seeks to unite lapsed and active gamers so that we might learn from one another, share our experiences and areas of interest in a bid to renew and re-energise the enjoyment of the hobby for all. Whether you're a self-proclaimed hardcore gamer or simply a casual and occasional fan of the medium, all are warmly embraced and welcome here. I'm Lee Howard, proud team member of Lapsed Gamer Radio, and along with all the fine folk you're going to be hearing from on this pilot transmission, I'm one of the co-creators and co-founders of this new fledgling gaming community. It is my privilege today to be able to introduce my fellow LGR team member and the main host of our podcast, Mr. Joe Calvo. How are you, fella?
Hello, Lee. Oh, it's nice to be back on the mic again. It's wonderful. It feels great to be in this chair. It's been a while. I'm fine. You?
Yeah, good. I know it's been your birthday recently, so I hope that went off, in exciting fashion.
Yeah. It was a bit of a sort of wild celebration. Nothing too over the top, but just, 44 is a big number for me at the moment, before you get to the big 4-5. So I thought I'd sort of celebrate in style. But yes, I've recovered. I'm back. I'm willing and really excited for this project and just want to get going again.
Now, I'm going to, with all due deference, be handing over the floor to you, Joe, in a moment. But before I do that, I'd like to also welcome our esteemed LGR team member, our lead podcast editor, as well as our artwork maestro, Mark Ray. Very happy to be speaking with you today, buddy. How's things?
Yeah, going really well, mate. Going really, really well. Sort of got my head down, being the Scotty of the podcast, topping up the dilithium crystals and all that. So, yeah, it's going really well.
And you've been very busy as well, because you're not only kind of lending your expertise to us, but you're also promoting and helping some other kind of indie UK podcasts. So that's right, isn't it?
Yes. Quite obsessed with podcasts and just love listening to them and always have done. And just want to try and help a few smaller podcasts get a leg up, really, and get some exposure. So, yeah, I've been helping out with Digital Diaries and getting them up and running. And you guys, LGR and... Yeah, my old podcast, the AI Bots, that sort of came and went. But yeah, just like I said, I'm really obsessed with them. So I just want to try and make this podcast the best it can be.
Okay, over to you then, Joey.
Well, thanks to both Mark and Lee, of course. It's probably useful to begin by explaining a little bit more about what Lapsed Gamer Radio is and where we're coming from, so to speak. On this debut launch announcement, we're going to talk about the ethos and intent behind Lapsed Gamer Radio and what you as potential listeners can expect to hear from us in the coming months in terms of content. And also we'll be introducing the full LGR team in a lineup gradually through the show. You'll hear outtakes about certain questions that we've asked them and their responses, and each of their names will appear accordingly. It's a series of putting this into one big patchwork of introductions from the team members and also to what we do. So let's start from the beginning and really see where we've got our name from and why this Lapsed Gamer Radio. What is a lapsed gamer, basically?
I'm sure it kind of will mean different things to different members, but just talking from my own perspective, I regard myself as a lapsed gamer simply because I'm daydreaming of like a means for myself to get back into the hobby. And really Lapsed Gamer Radio, just as a premise, was born out of like this desire on my part to play more games, but also to talk about that, with other like-minded people. Not just lapsed gamers, but, people that are currently still enjoying the hobby and active. And thankfully, and kind of like much to my surprise, there seem to be more than a few people out there who seem to gravitate towards the concept and, wanting to take this daydream of mine forward and at least try to make it something more.
Mark?
Same sort of thing, really. Life gets in the way. And, I've always enjoyed gaming ever since I was a little kid, and finding that time as you grow older is more and more difficult. So same sort of situation. I wanted to find a community that I can, think, I want to play this multiplayer game. I wonder if, now I go, there's no one I can play it with. So there's no point me picking this game up. But now, hopefully with LGR, I can pick this game up and say, is anyone else from the community want to play this, and try and, build up, foster a bit more of a life, and try and get into more and more new experiences that I've probably I've had to turn down before.
Yeah. How long does this lapse period last generally? I mean, is it something that reignites itself? Is it something that you sort of eventually think, I'm going to try something new, or something that's brand new on the shelf? Or, as you say, suddenly a community appears and you start playing. What time frame are we talking about here? Maybe it's different for each of us, but from our own experiences.
For mine, it's definitely something that's like blows hot and cold, and I think I've been that way since pretty much like the N64 days. That's like the last time I would ever label myself like a hardcore gamer, in the sense that I was pretty much aware of every game that was going to be coming out. There was like huge periods of anticipation of saving up money to buy those games, and that's when I had like a ready-made team, I guess, where we'd go around each other's houses and play like multiplayer games and things like that. And then I think, as Mark's correctly alluded to, with adulthood and other kind of extra responsibilities, but also other passions and hobbies, they end up taking up more of your time. And it's been it's been like certain consoles that have come out, like I think everyone got swept up for a while in the whole Wii euphoria, and that was true of myself. Picked up a Wii and a DS, and then it's been most recently the fact that my son has started to take his first tentative steps into showing an interest into gaming. So we ended up getting like a Wii U and a 3DS, like literally within like the last month. So I'm hoping this is going to be like my entry point back in, and hopefully give it a bit more sustainability now that I've got, you guys to motivate me.
Yeah, we hope so. Mark, tell me, why or when is the right time to return to the hobby, in your opinion, after a lapsed period?
That's a difficult question, but I'd say right now is the best time to come back, when there's a new console generation, everything's fresh and new. There's a lot of stuff coming on the horizon. You've got sort of VR coming in, a completely new technology that no one's ever seen that could completely blow gaming wide open.
But we're seeing very like-minded stuff at the moment. Really, the PS4 hasn't really given me any sort of like, this is it. This is exactly what the new generation's going to give. I mean, is that yet to come? But
what we are seeing is the rise of indie games. This new, what we had in our childhood, I'm assuming we're all kind of the same age, but we had the kind of Spectrum home computer age where a bedroom developer could create a game, bring it out, and really make a name for themselves. These very small experiences that blew up massively. And you're starting to get that now with the whole indie games movement.
Yeah, and there's a whole kind of market infrastructure there that I think would give them a far greater platform. I mean, I think now, when I do think back to the Speccy era, it's incredible what those guys and the enthusiasts were able to achieve. Like now, it's almost built into the system, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look at Elite. Yeah. That game was a tiny few K on a tape, but it was in a massive, expansive universe that you could completely, go off and explore. And now they're trying to recreate that again with something like Elite Dangerous, in full 3D and really flesh it out. Yeah, and it's a much, much harder job. But, these new indie games, you're just getting so much new, more vital experiences coming out from that area. Just that area alone. And then obviously you've got your big AAAs as well that are just pushing that technology further and further and further forward. It's a really exciting time.
And like Joey, yourself, you were saying not only kind of you've been away from the microphone in terms of podcasting, I presume you've also experienced these kind of patches of lapsed gaming.
Yeah, I have. And, other more interesting things have come along, alcohol, women. No, I'm joking. No, there've been periods of a long time where I've just felt that all my gaming has been really samey. I've just got like 4 or 5 shooters on the go, or I'm doing something, I'm playing Far Cry and I'm playing an open world, or I'm playing something like this. And it's just all the same thing over and over again. And I have had periods of just thinking, look, I'm just going to wait till something better comes out or attracts me to it. Like Mark was saying, a good community is always a really, really nice start to get back into something like this and use an open game world to try to make that link between people. GTA 5, for example, multiplayer would be great because it attracts you back into having that fun. And it's all, the bottom line is this, that we're all gamers. We love gaming, and the experience together is always much more and much better amplified with other people than the single player. Let's be honest.
And you'll always try a new game if a lot of your friends or people you respect say, wow, no, this experience that you hadn't even considered before is very, very good. So you'll always jump in that way as well.
So we're hoping to get a few of these lapsed gamers that have just dropped off the boat, let's say, back into gaming again. Lots of things that are probably going to come up, community nights, game nights, things with games that people can go back and listen to, our experiences of games. A whole lot of wealth of information. So as I'm sure many of you listeners can appreciate, we're currently in the very early stages of preparation and basically beginning to come together to form the core ideas which will bring this new project that we have to life. Ultimately, what shape and form LGR takes on will be a reflection of the shared collected efforts and personalities of the people who take part now and in the future as guests or as listeners. You have contact with us if there's anything you'd like to share in the future, any comments or any contributions, more than welcome from any. This is a gaming podcast for gamers and like-minded people. Everybody is welcome.
Yep, certainly. I mean, obviously we'll give out some of those contact details towards the end, and really this kind of launch show is just an opportunity for us to kind of get the word out. I mean, as we record it today, it's only been a matter of weeks. Like I think it's been 1 calendar month since we floated the idea of LGR on Twitter, and obviously that's been an incredibly useful tool to bring the team together. And we've been amazed and exhilarated to see that Lapsed Gamer Radio, our bid to unite gamers, has struck a chord, and we've been able to assemble a team of really, if we're honest, a lot of strangers, loads of completely different, diverse people, and the fact that we've all kind of been unified in this hope that we can create something for other lapsed gamers and active gamers to enjoy, to solidify and reinforce their enjoyment of the hobby, has given us the impetus to get this initial planning underway, culminating into us getting together to talk about it today.
It'd be interesting to see what it's like. If I could fast forward right the way now from a year from today, we'd be looking back on this and hopefully having a great community, great people, and lots of listeners as well that appreciate, the work we're doing and really enjoy it, which I think is the main aim of this, trying to get people to, join us on game nights and also, talk to us about their feelings about games, and maybe even if they're lapsed, to bring them back, which really is one of the things that we are focusing on as well.
Yeah, no, I think that it is going to be a challenge, but one that's kind of rewarding in the sense that, I definitely want to hear from, other team members about their experiences of being a lapsed gamer and how they're kind of managing the change of starting to play more, like how are they actually practically fitting that into their working weekly life. But also from the listeners, any kind of anecdotes that they've got of games that they've tried to use as an impetus to get back into gaming that didn't work, as well as the ones that they've found they've really gelled with.
Well, I hope that all this patchwork is knitted together very nicely with the help of community members and our own team. And that hope that, a year from now, we're talking about something great and something that lots of people support and contribute. So I'm really looking forward to it. Really want this to take off, because I think it's just been up to now, as you say, Lee, now it's just simply just a daydream that we've had, and now it's actually beginning to materialize. So let's hope.
It has been wonderful to see so many people so passionate about a project, straight off the bat with no push or anything. It's just kind of like everyone's just suddenly all just jumped in and just wanted to make something happen and make this community great. So it's gonna be really interesting a year from now to see who's jumped in and who's really sort of taken this onto another level.
I'd like now to offer our listeners a little insight and introduction into our lineup team members as we now feature the first batch of vertical slices, as they're called. Who are we? Part 1. What happened or caused you to lapse?
Kevin Moore.
It's a combination of things that have caused me to become a lapsed gamer. Work will always ruin the chance to fully explore Liberty City or Middle Earth, or whichever world I'm trying to escape to this week. This is a real catch-22 situation though, because you need to work more hours to feed your expansive and expensive gaming habit. Another major change that I know some of us might have experienced firsthand is parenthood. Again, this takes a big bite of your time away, so playing online is a definite no-no, unless of course all your friends are insomniacs too. At one time, I had 4 consoles hooked up in the living room, all ready to fire up whenever I needed them. Now I've got a PS4 that probably plays Despicable Me on Blu-ray more than any game I'll ever own. Although the Vita's come along that makes it easy for me to sneak off to another room and play it a bit more. There's also been a massive shift in what games are now too. I've seen games that take anything up to an hour of installing to hard drives, checking for updates, and then the ever-present crawl of opening cutscenes. When you've only got a couple of hours max, this can be a real pain. These are a necessary evil though. If you're actually ever going to know what you're doing, you've got to sit through these. But then there's a good 80% of amazing, beautiful games I've never finished because I've had to try and remember what I'm doing while I'm being overcome by 3 hordes of zombies that I can't remember ever being there the last time I picked up the controller. So another 5-star release ends up being binned off as I move on to the next new release, which is usually the sequel to the game I've just binned off. These are probably the main reasons I'd consider myself a lapsed gamer, or unbelievably casual to say the least. I wish I could say it was sex, drugs and rock and roll that pulled me away from something this enjoyable, but them's the breaks I guess.
What drives you to play games?
Peter Cleaves.
So I'm a completionist. I like to see all the content the game has to offer from beginning to end, including sort of all the side quests and optional things you get in the game. The problem with this, of course, is that it takes up a lot of time. I remember something like Bioshock Infinite, a game I utterly adored. Took me over 20 hours to complete, and not because I found anything necessarily difficult about the game, but whenever I was outside of combat, I was just walking as slowly as possible through the world, taking in everything there was to see, listening to all the NPC conversations, reading all the little newspaper clippings. As such, I tend to prefer narrative-driven games. I have time for all types of games, but I don't tend to play many games where it's all about getting the high score, leaderboard, or being the best at multiplayer. Even to a point where games like MMOs like World of Warcraft, I remember playing that for a couple of years, and then once the guild I was in defeated the then toughest boss in the game, I considered the game complete and I stopped playing it. The reason I'm more attracted to these sort of games is that on a personal level, I play games to escape, as a form of escapism. I think the interactive nature of video games makes it much more invested in the world, and much more so than I personally watching a film where you're maybe watching someone else's journey through the world. Even in the video game where you're playing as a different character, you forge your own path through these worlds. And after all, I'm never going to save the world in my day job. So that's what drives me to play games.
Which gaming genre do you particularly enjoy and would like to have more games made in this vein?
Katie Stubbs.
RPGs. I'm a big RPG fan. Some of my favourite RPGs, just to name a few, are Mass Effect series, Dragon Age series, Fallout 3, Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, all that stuff. I just love RPGs because basically you can do whatever the hell you want, and you can basically tell your own story. You could be an arsehole, you can be a hero, you can be a rogue, you can be an evil villain sometimes. But basically that's the big reason why I love RPGs. At the moment, off the top of my head, I'm just thinking of the new Mass Effect game, Mass Effect 4 that's coming out soon, and I would like that to actually be go away from what it has been before and become an open exploration game. Obviously the RPG elements have to stay there because it's Mass Effect, but I would like it to be also an open exploration game. That would just be great. Take your ship take your ship, and travel the galaxy. Travel to all planets, meet different races, do different things. Hopefully that answers the question. And thank you for having me on the Lapsed Gamer podcast.
What game do you revisit time and time again?
Ryan Heyman.
Well, I will say that probably the game that I've played through to completion the most of any game is Banjo-Kazooie. I just find that to be a delightful comfort game. Kind of like a hot cocoa on a cold day. But yeah, Banjo-Kazooie for the Nintendo 64. It's one of the games that I grew up with. The music, the animation, the way that it feels to play, just everything comes together so well to really just pull me back into that space. And, by now I can, play the entire thing with my eyes closed. I know it forwards and backwards, but it's just something that is hugely affirming every time I go back to it. So it's one that I'll throw in, every maybe rainy day. And living here in Seattle, we get quite a few rainy days.
Well, as you've heard, those are the team members with certain questions that we gave out to them and we thought were important that we'd answer as a team. So you've already been introduced to some of the members, the core members of the group. The likely format of the episode, recurring podcast sections and release schedule. This is sort of the sort of idea that's going to change, and it's just going to be, different suggestions, very, very flexible. So every show will be unique in its own way. And I think it's going to give the listeners and the team an opportunity to try to look at things, look back at things, and look at what's coming next. This type of flexibility is open, as we said before, for you to also contribute as listeners, and not just from our part, but also from the outside. We want to hear what you have to say about the things that we put out there, and also about the games we play. So, as I say, there may be some recurring sections. The first one that we're going to introduce is Tuned In. Lee, tell us about this.
Yeah, so this will likely be a section that we'll have in like a standard episode, and it's going to kind of be an opportunity where the hosts that are on that particular episode, because I suppose it should be pointed out that part of the luxury of having a big team and part of the fun of it is that we will all kind of dip in and out, so it won't just be Mark, Joey and Lee on every episode. Mm-hmm. We're hoping
won't be the same crew every time.
No, it should, people can dip in and out as it suits their kind of availability of time, because we're more than acutely aware that if some of us are struggling to find the time to play games, we haven't got the time to be podcasted on a regular basis. So
we are lapsed gamers after all.
Yeah. Or we end up lapsing after all.
Yeah. So the idea is that, whoever's going to be on that episode will have an opportunity to just bring something to the table in the sense of whatever tuned them back into gaming at that particular time. So it could be that on one episode someone talks about an article that they've read that inspired them in some way or got them thinking about games again. It could be that another host talks about a particular game they've just installed and, spent half an hour with, and their kind of hopes or fears for what the experience they might get with that game is.
This also offers a very, very wide variety of things to listen to as well. I mean, it's not every episode being about one specific game. It's also going to be about various experiences, past and present, from various people. So really, really a potpourri of lots of different information for people to pick and choose as they wish to listen to.
Well, that's what we hope.
Yeah. It's something different, something good.
So yeah, it's just about igniting people's interest in gaming again and sort of bringing that passion back, really.
Good. Well, let's hope it does ignite. One of our members, Ryan, has been kind enough to outline the LGR playlist section, and let's hear what he has to say.
Hey, Ryan here again, and I'm here to introduce a new segment. Although I suppose this being the first episode of a new podcast, everything is going to be a new segment. But anyways, this is something we're really excited about. It's called the LGR Playlist. It's incredible how fast gaming is moving and evolving these days as a medium. New ideas are revolutionizing gaming all the time, and it's a really exciting time to be a part of this massive wave of invention. But it can also be extraordinarily overwhelming, like stepping foot into a raging river if you're not a part of that scene already. And so since this show is aimed towards people who have fallen out of touch with gaming, we're going to be curating examples of games that we think especially stand out as useful examples of the type of invention, of the type of new ideas that are being introduced. Games that are fundamental to understanding what the medium is now and what it's becoming. With this selection of games, we hope to bring titles that are both accessible and also informative and enlightening about what's going on in gaming and, what you may have missed while you were away. We aim to bring games that won't waste your time, that will give you something really meaty to think about and chew on for a while, that will give you something really exciting, really innovative, really fun, because that's what it comes down to sometimes. But anyways, to kick off this new segment, I'd like to make the first submission onto the LGR playlist. We'll be curating a new game every month and then discussing it as a group amongst those who have played it in a month's time. A handful of our panelists will be playing the games every month and discussing them, but we'd also like to invite the listeners to play along with us and, kind of come to a better understanding between all of us as to what these games are bringing to the medium as a whole and how they contribute and how they're special. So I think there's a lot to learn, and I think there's a lot we can all learn together. So I'm really excited to be introducing the very first game of the LGR playlist, and that is Kentucky Route Zero. Kentucky Route Zero is a point-and-click adventure game, kind of in the style of the old Monkey Island era LucasArts and Sierra point-and-click adventure games from the early 90s. Although instead of being traditionally kind of comically focused, as a lot of those early adventure games are, this one's a bit more like a dark tone poem. The art style is minimalist and striking, and the entire thing plays out like an urban legend, like a really mysterious campfire story that you would hear from someone and not know what parts of it are true and what parts of it are made up or exaggerated. The game is about an aging truck driver and his old dog who are making a final delivery before retirement to a mysterious dogwood drive. And to get there, they have to find the state route 0 in the middle of Kentucky. And along the way, you're meeting strange characters, you're encountering things that may or may not really exist, and it all exists in this strange kind of surreal, kind of like a Twin Peaks kind of atmosphere. I think that there's a lot of interesting subjectivity to the events that are happening on screen, which is something that is difficult to do in games because they're fundamentally more thoroughly explorable than paintings, than film. We aren't meant to voyeuristically watch this world in front of us. We're meant to actually inhabit it. And so it's especially interesting when there comes a game that wrestles a lot of that fundamental understanding of the universe away from us. And this is a game that fully embraces this idea of player subjectivity, of the subjective experience, in a way that not a lot of games do, even still. This is a game that plays half on screen and half in your own mind, and oftentimes kind of like The Walking Dead, the Telltale Walking Dead series that was so acclaimed many years back. The choices that you're making are not fundamentally changing what's going to be going on screen, the manifest content of the experience in front of you, but they are going to change your understanding of who the characters are, how they relate to each other, what kinds of personalities these people have, and that's a really exciting space that I'm super thrilled that this game is exploring. This is an episodic game with 5 chapters, of which 3 have been released, although the release schedule is not entirely transparent. It was a year in between episodes 2 and 3, and it's been a year since episode 3, and we don't know when 4 and 5 are coming just yet, but they'll happen eventually. So this is one where I would say don't bother waiting for the entire thing to be finished. Just play what we have so far. And, the other chapters will come when they come. But each one does stand on its own. And they do play into a larger story, but it doesn't make use of manipulative cliffhangers or anything like that would kind of unfairly leverage this space in between games and make you miserable, needing to know what's going to happen next. It's more kind of like a moment by moment story, and that's what makes it special. So even though the game is still being developed, I'd say play the first 3 acts, and then let's come together in a month and talk about what we think about it. I don't want to say too much more as to color your opinion about it, but the game is available via Steam and playable on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And so if you have one of those platforms, then I would invite you to play along with us Kentucky Route Zero. Full of mystery, full of intrigue. Let's see what we can make of this together.
So as Ryan says, it's one of the things that is going to teach us to try to bring back these lapsed gamers into something that they're going to enjoy. So using the teacher-student effect is going to hopefully bring people to try new games. The game you've just heard about, Kentucky Route Zero, is going to be our first game. So hopefully our listeners will be downloading and getting their teeth into that, so to speak, so that we can talk about it and compare notes and see exactly what we've felt about the game on episode 1, which will be the task, or our little bit of homework, as the teacher would put it, to see how we feel or what our experiences are. So hopefully we'll have a wealth of information and lots and lots and lots to talk about on show 1, which I'm looking really forward to trying to see what comes out of that.
Yep, it's a game I've never heard of at all, so that's probably a good entry point for me.
Yeah.
Just getting back into, giving something a try and taking me out of my comfort zone. I think, again, that's one of the things I'm hoping to take away, is to be like the encouragement and the kind of support to, play games that I wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah, it's as I say, the teacher-student effect, this dynamic that we're trying to employ is something different. No more or less just the experiences of, for example, saying, yeah, I've played a game, I know what it's like, I know what my feelings are like, and then you should go and try it. But this is, as Ryan says, a way of sort of giving a different effect, a different perspective to a game. This is what we feel about it, and we're going to do it and experience it together. I think that's a fantastic idea to really try to get, these lapsed gamers back on board, so to speak.
Yeah, and key to it is that we're not all going to be expecting everyone to go away and buy a machine capable of playing it and completing it. It's more like an open invitation, and that the team members will opt in or opt out, and the ones that have played it might not necessarily have completed it, because I think it's just going to be as interesting to hear from the crew members that have tried it and only got to a certain point, and if they didn't end up progressing, why was that? Was it something about the game design, an exterior factor from their life? Because I think that's the kind of picture that I'd hope to paint, and an opportunity that we can learn from one another is like, how are some of the struggles inherent to the actual medium, or is it more about what's going on elsewhere, and then we can try and identify ways of addressing, come out almost like with a timetable. Well, what are those chunks of time that we've got that we don't realise where we could get a bit of gaming in? And what games lend themselves to that type of play?
From Sega, the Mega Drive, with Sonic the Hedgehog game. 16-bit console, which plays over 100 exciting high-tech games with high-quality graphics. Toys R Us price, $126.94.
Another topic that's going to be doing the rounds, so to speak, on the podcast is a discussion topic, because no podcast is complete without a little bit of a round table exercise in there. So, Mark, you've come up with something called Topic Tombola. What exactly is that?
Yes, it's a terrible name, and it will probably change. But it's going to be a focus round table, basically, discussion on something that a lapsed gamer maybe is having trouble with in gaming. Maybe it's something they absolutely love and has brought them back into gaming. Just something that we can all sit around and have a chat about. It could be difficulty curves, difficulty spikes. It could be specific types of in-game design that they see going throughout games that they've played that really brings them back into gaming. Online experiences, just silly little things that they've done. Anything that basically is a topic that we can all discuss in a round table to really basically show the passion for gaming again.
Yeah, and ties in that whole kind of mentor tutor relationship that we were alluding to earlier. It could be that a listener or one of the LGR team members has had a particular dilemma about a game, and they just want a bit of support or a bit of input to kind of help them over like a bump in their playing experience. So that would be a good opportunity, because I mean, I'm sure that's going to be something that would have universal appeal, like sort of a problem solving section.
As an example, like finding time for games. Where do you find the time for games? That kind of thing, and then you could have a roundtable discussion about that.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And it is quite a difficult question sometimes to answer, and everyone would probably have a different point of view about it. You know, time for games is actually quite difficult, especially, you know, with working lives and everything else going on, kids, etc. So it is sort of food for thought in this case when we do put this down on the table and talk about it. It could come up with some interesting outcomes. It'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. But yeah.
Yeah, we got some text coming in. Shout out to Mark, Kirby, King DDD and all the Amiibo cartels stacking that major cash. They're throwing around more paper than that kid in Paperboy, you understand? Yeah. Yo, DJ, rinse that track. All of your bassline all belong to us.
Now, as I alluded to earlier, LGR is a constantly changing, flexible entity, and features and specials and things are hopefully going to be coming from the outside as well as from inside. Our core members also have the freedom to also do special shows on a particular game or anything, any contribution that they feel is worthy of the listener to be able to try to get something out of it as Lapsed Gamer. And as I said, it's a flexible entity, so everybody should be able to join in, whether in or out. So, okay, I'd like to take this opportunity again to bring in a few more of those voices that you're going to be hearing on the show. So here are a few words from our other core members.
Lapsing implies that you were a gamer previously. So what is it about the old days that you'd like or want to recapture?
Lee Howard.
Okay, it's probably helpful to begin by kind of acknowledging that yes, I do consider myself a lapsed gamer, in the sense that I used to devote far more of my time and energy to the hobby than I do currently. And yes, as the question implies, part of my desire to reconnect with like-minded gamers, to rediscover the pleasure and fun of playing video games, does indeed stem from like an element of nostalgia. Like many people, I suspect, I've got like really fond memories of my first exposure to games, be it in sort of the coin-op arcade environment or my first home computers and consoles. I mean, I can, remember vividly even now, like the impact was really powerful and immediate, and the kind of affection evoked to me for like the singular experience of gaming was deep-rooted and kind of continued throughout different generations of consoles and I guess refined gaming PCs, and in lots of ways the kind of each new iteration of these machines and the gaming catalogue they gave birth to acted as like time signatures, like as I myself progressed from childhood through to like adolescence. So yes, I've long lapsed as a gamer in adulthood, allowing kind of real life duties and my other interests and hobbies to bury gaming as like an afterthought. But I hope with the help of Lapsed Gamer Radio to in some form or another further kind of revive my warm memories of past systems and somehow emulate that sense of community to be had through gaming with friends. Finally, and perhaps most specifically, my hope to make gaming a priority in my limited leisure time goes beyond simply nostalgia. Even as a lapsed gamer, I can recognise that video games are an ever-evolving medium which can genuinely rival the likes of cinema and television to deliver innovative and emotionally resonant experiences. too often I barely even start a game before I allow myself to be distracted, and when I come back I just start a different game and the cycle just repeats itself over and over again. I think actually playing a game from start to finish and fully completing it has become such a precious rarity for me. It's become clear from talking to friends and associates on social media that I'm not alone in feeling and thinking about the concerns I've mentioned. There does seem to be a little family of us growing, a little family of us lapsed gamers that are coming to the overdue realisation that we're seldom actually giving ourselves the time and space to truly immerse ourselves in playing a game. So whether it's for fun, escapism, or kind of any aspect of the broad spectrum of entertainment, we're not doing ourselves as gamers or the artists and developers who create the games we play any favours by kind of haphazardly dipping our toes into the hobby in this often fragmented and unfocused fashion. We've lost something possibly along the way with the passing of years. I mean, I openly admit I'm not putting in what is needed to recapture the reward back. Quite simply, I'm allowing myself to miss out on the unique wonders that gaming has to offer. Starting from now and the launch of Lapsed Gamer Radio, assisted and empowered by my fellow teammates and our listeners, we can share this journey of rediscovery, of rebalancing our free time to find a manageable but meaningful way back to our love of video games.
What is the most fun you've had with a game?
Andrew Pidietsky.
This was with my brother. It was a 10-year gap between me and my brother. And we played a number of PS1 games. Ones that I can remember were Porsche Challenge, WWF SmackDown, ISS, and V-Rally. In particular, these last two games, V-Rally and International Superstar Soccer, we created charts, we to note down how many games we were winning against each other. We created consequences if you failed first to 5 and so on, and it just kept going on and on. It was a real form of it, almost like attrition warfare with it, but it was friendly warfare. It was always like, alright, you just beat me, you're 3-2 ahead in game, I want another one to catch you up. A couple of times it just absolutely thrashed the pants of me in International Superstar Soccer. And then in V-Rally, it was a rally game. I know Sega Rally's the best, and I'll call him McRae at the time. This was just so much fun. It's split screen, you were bouncing. I'm not saying the physics weren't the most realistic, but you were bouncing around the screen. But it was so fun, it was so addictive. Just sitting next to your brother, just beating the hell out of each other, trying to gain any sort of advantage, just knocking into trees and everything. That was absolutely amazing time for me.
Which well-regarded game do you dislike?
Mark Hamer.
Now, there are lots of games and franchises I don't like, but I can still see the appeal in them. For instance, I don't really enjoy Call of Duty. I haven't since Modern Warfare 2, but I get why people do like it. Likewise, I don't like MMOs. I've tried a couple of free-to-play ones, had a 30-day free trial of World of Warcraft, and it's just not for me. But again, I can see the appeal. But there's one game that I've never understood the appeal of, or why it was so critically acclaimed. Now, I grew up playing a lot of PC sim games, SimCity, Theme Park, Theme Hospital, Roller Coaster Tycoon, etc. I love them all, but there's one game, a stablemate of SimCity, that I just don't get, and that game is The Sims. I was 15 when it came out, and everyone at school seemed to be playing it. It had appeal among people I knew at school who weren't gamers. I inevitably succumbed and got a copy, and within hours I was bored of it and started finding interesting ways to murder my Sims. You know, getting them all in the pool and removing the ladder, or filling a room with ovens and removing the door. You see, even at age 15 and unburdened by the reality of adult life and responsibilities, I couldn't find the appeal in pretending to manage someone else's life. Cleaning the house, going to work, managing social lives in a family. I just don't understand why anyone would want to play for more than an hour or so before becoming bored of the whole thing. Now, I'm someone who, as I mentioned, adores sim games of all type. From SimCity to Football Manager. I mean, Football Manager is a game mostly comprised of spreadsheets and data, and yet I can happily play it for hundreds of hours, because like SimCity or Theme Park or Prison Architect, it allows you to try your hand at something you can't in real life, or at least are extremely unlikely to. Be that managing a football team, a prison, a theme park, a hospital, or even an entire city. And that's why I don't understand The Sims. I play video games as a form of escapism from everyday life, so I don't know why anyone would want to escape by pretending to manage someone else's. Now, as any successful EA game, it did spawn a number of sequels, although only 3 main sequels, which shows amazing restraint from EA. And the series continued to sell well right up to Sims 3, which got a respectable 85 on Metacritic and sold 1.5 million units in its first week. Although the wheels appear to have finally fallen off and Sims 4 wasn't well received critically or commercially. Almost as if the world has finally realised that I am right and The Sims has always been shit. Anyway, that's the end of that rant. Thanks for listening.
Which titles would you recommend to a lapsed gamer to bring them back to games?
Joey Calvo.
What titles? It seems like a very difficult question to answer at the moment. Well, I don't know really. I've had or been a victim of lapsed gaming before, you know, where I've not really been sure what I was playing was really sort of doing it for me, and it's been very difficult to get back into some sort of rhythm and some sort of game unless it's been something that everybody's really been playing at the same time. Titles I would recommend, I would probably say something that's sort of open world, you know, something Rockstar-y, GTA 5, Red Dead Redemption. Well documented, it's one of my favourite games, but it's something that I think a lot of us enjoy because, you know, whether it be a single player experience or a multiplayer experience, I think it gets you back into that role of playing a game that you know that you can share with friends in a community. I think that's what really gets me back and out of that fuzzy period of not really knowing what I want, or leaving gaming altogether and just going off and doing something completely different. Titles I recommend, I think again it's a very difficult question, but I would say something like The Last of Us, something like Far Cry, something like Grand Theft Auto, games in which, you know, you can really sort of feel something for them. And in terms of old titles, I would say something like Dead Space, something to reignite that little sort of fear or that little extra touch that you're looking for, you know, maybe when you've seen a film or listened to music many times and you're sort of bored of the same genre, just something different to change. So I think a change of genre is also maybe a little bit helpful, and, you know, to get that fix back, the one that you want and the one that you've lost. But I find it hard to get back into a game unless I really, really like it. Eventually, the love of gaming comes up, you know, it rises to the surface because we are, after all, gamers. So I think it is necessary for us to keep that little flame alight at the bottom of our hearts and try to enjoy gaming in every aspect, you know, with friends or single player.
How did you get into gaming originally?
Mark Ray.
It's in the early 80s, 1982, 1983 roughly. This wooden and plastic magic box appeared in front of my sister and I, and pretty much instantly my childhood curiosity was piqued. As a way to keep both of us entertained, one wet weekend my dad decided to get out his Atari 2600 out of the loft. There were so many questions. What were all these new gadgets and doodads we were suddenly having thrust upon us? What's that stick thing for, Dad? What are those turny things? With a knowing smile, My dad explained everything as best as he could to our tiny little minds to comprehend. Then he fired up the game. Combat. Or Tanks as my sister and I came to know it. My mind was blown. I could interact with the pictures on the TV. It was alive. I could make the tank move around the maze. I could shoot the other tanks. I'd instantly fallen head over heels in love for the first time with whatever this wooden box covered in switches was. Every weekend for months and months, I would badger my dad to play that tank game. And so started my enduring passion for video games. Cheers, Dad.
Unfortunately, Jack hasn't been able to record his own audio due to the fact that he's lost his voice and he'd had a problem with one of his microphones. He has tried, but he's kindly submitted exactly what his words would have been on the recording. They are the following. He says,
"One game I've spent many an hour with is Bandai Namco's Go Vacation on the Wii, which launched to middling reviews back in 2011. The title itself combines an odd mix of minigames and open-world exploration in an attempt to capture that complete holiday blend of activity and relaxation. The minigames themselves, which range from skiing to shooting to tennis, and even those test your strength machines you find at arcades, they're all good, but never really particularly feel standout. On top of this, the game's controls are frankly baffling, with every vehicle using motion controls designed to emulate a pair of skis, leaving most activities feeling unintuitive. But the real charm of the game comes from just wandering around and exploring the resorts. There's something quite magical about this, plonking yourself at the top of a snowy mountain and skiing your way back down to the base, only to crash into a polar bear halfway down, knocking you off a cliff and into a secret cave ripe for exploration. Similarly, there is a real charm to trekking up the other side of the mountain on horseback in order to jump into a kayak and ride the waterfall and rapids across the map as you make your way back to your starting point. Or even finding a hidden cave while swimming on the beach resort, which in turn leads to lost ruins to explore. If this hasn't sold you already, then maybe the mention of a real-time 20-minute train ride you can take around one of the resorts will. No? Well, it was worth a shot. Either way, this game may not be remembered by most people, but when I want to relax and unwind, Go Vacation is always a treat to explore and enjoy at my own pace.
So hello again. So we're now nearly at the end of today's launch show, and we'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen, and we hope that we can count on your generosity and support as we try to bring the little pieces of this patchwork show together to some sort of fruition in the coming months. In the meantime, you can participate and interact with LGR in any number of ways, and we really hope you do. All your views, your comments are going to be listened to and probably even participate in part of the show. We openly invite you to join us in any capacity you feel. If you have something to contribute, this could be regular, irregular input to the show, maybe a mic behind the scenes. Perhaps you'd like to hook up with us for an online gamer and then talk about the experiences. Perhaps you're a lapsed gamer and now you're suddenly getting back into it. Perhaps you're going through a feeling of, oh no, I'm going to lapse, and you want to tell us about it. Anything. All these activities are just as important and necessary to making LGR a big success that we want it to be, and anything else. So do please feel free to get in touch, introduce yourself, let us know what game you're currently playing and what's bringing you back into the hobby, or maybe not, and tell us how you might like to get involved with LGR. The door is always open to our listeners. As we say, this is flexible. This is a podcast for gamers by gamers.
Yep, and we should just say that, there's no requirements of being, having an expert knowledge of games, because I openly confess I don't. And, it's more about like learning, that can be just as engaging a listen as we kind of like discover things together and exchange ideas. And there's no kind of prerequisite level of ability in playing games. You don't even need to have experience of podcasting. No. We do want to be as transparent as possible and really hope to, give people the encouragement to get involved. You know, there's not going to be stressful deadlines or really inflexible demands on your time. If you, play games a lot or only a little, but you just fancy reconnecting with a hobby in some way and being part of like a relaxed and welcoming little podcast, we'd be really thrilled to hear you.
You can also support the launch and development of LGR by emailing us, subscribing to us on iTunes and all the other podcast publishing platforms that we probably haven't actually set up yet.
We will. We'll get there. We've got one. We've got a Facebook though, haven't we?
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. So come along there, have a chat with us. Tell us about what you're doing to get back into gaming or not, what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying. You can also follow us on Twitter. You can like us on that Facebook page, and as a bit of fun, you can help us build the community by adding a tweet ribbon to your Twitter profile.
Yep, and we should probably thank Peter Cleves for designing that for us as a bit of fun. I must admit I haven't got around to doing it myself yet, but I'll have to add it. And also thank Peter for all the questions that we featured throughout the show.
Yeah, fantastic.
So if you do want to come along and play with us, you'll be able to find our gamer tags in the show notes of this episode and future episodes. So we'd always love to play games with you guys and the whole community. So don't feel shy. Come along and get involved and play some games with us.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. It'd be nice to get a community going and get some gamer nights on the go pretty soon once we've got the ball rolling. But if you have any comments, any suggestions, anything that you'd like to say to us, then the contact details are the LGR email is lapsedgamerradio, or one word, @gmail.com. As Mark just said a moment ago, we also have a Twitter feed, which is the twitter.com/lapsgamer or @lapsgamer. And we also have a Facebook page as well. So look for us on there too, because your comments on there would also be very welcome. I think that's it as far as contact details go. So we can move on to the shout outs and thank you. We've had a lot of support and a lot of nice comments from people, and we'd like to mention these people for contacting us with encouragement, questions and complimentary messages regarding the launch of this wonderful project known as LGR. The first person is Ricky Lee Everett. Good luck with the goal, getting back into playing games and podcasts. I can't remember the last time I played a real game of note. I get sucked into the Marvel Alliance game on Facebook, but that's as far as I get. Very shallow waters. Fond memories of Final Fantasy VII, though. Thank you, Ricky.
Becky Simpson, good luck with it. We will be listening with interest, although I'm very out of touch. You've had me reminiscing about video games.
And we've got another nice message from Tony Black. He said that he really liked the name of the podcast and that he'd be up for coming on to talk to us about older games. He says he could talk about Monkey Island for hours.
Now here's the name I know well. Colm Sherham. Last Save Loaded. What does that remind me of? That Last Save Loaded thing? I've got no idea what that's.
Yeah, and it's probably an opportune moment to mention now that your old cowboy, your old cohort on that is actually part of LGR. We may or may not have heard from him today because I know he's been very busy. But yeah, Jake Del Toro is part of the team as well, and much appreciated.
Yeah, it's good to be recording with him again as well as with everybody else. So it's been a while, as I said before. So I'm looking forward to having Jake at the round table and having a bit of banter with him. I think it should be good fun. Colm Sheridan of Last Save Loaded and the Year of Shame Challenge 2 and 3 offered words of encouragement and support for looking forward to listening to the first show. Always nice to have a new podcast to listen to, as well as offering to appear as a guest. Yeah. Colm, always welcome like everybody else.
Now we've got my good Antipodean friend Justin Knowles. Looking forward to hearing the first episode. Question for the show. Is there a type of game you think you would like but can't commit to, e.g. MOBAs, MMORPGs or Souls games?
I would say Souls games.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, why? What puts you off? Is it the difficulty?
I think it's the difficulty and the sort of relentless to sort of like to chuck you down, you know what I mean? To throw you down every time you do it.
Yeah, the bully pinning you down to the floor.
That's it. I think I'd get frustrated. I'd smash a few controllers, I reckon. That would be my sort of, no, it's annoying. I get annoyed when there's a really difficult boss or something like this going on and I'm just like, But I think if it's continuous at every level and every now and then and, this sort of defiance as well of like whether you don't know whether you should believe the comments or not as well as you go through, whether they're helpful, whether they're misleading, etc. This sort of little bit of
mind games,
traitor effect, should I say?
Yeah, the meta game.
that's it. That also puts me off a bit, I think. But, well, I mean, I don't know. I can't never say never, I guess.
Yeah, I think for myself it's been like meaty length RPGs. So I know you're a massive fan of Red Dead, and people talk about the Mass Effect games and Skyrim, things like that. That they look amazing and wonderful, and I always want to be part of that world. But I'm just so fearful of the time commitment that would be required that I don't think I'd ever be able to kind of finish a game that was like over 10 hours. That's kind of how casual I've become.
Well, Red Dead has a good aspect to it because there's lots, the Rockstar touch, as you'll see in a future episode, because I hope to do a feature on this. But there's lots of sort of meta stuff to be doing in the meantime, and it really does. It doesn't feel like 10 hours.
You can drop in and drop out.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. I think those sort of games that, like I've said before, I wouldn't necessarily turn to because they seem too difficult or inaccessible to me. Lapsed Gamer is like the perfect chance to try them, because you've got willing participants and who've got probably more knowledge than yourself to kind of help guide you through the experience. And I think that's probably what I'd find most satisfying.
For me, the only type of game that I can't commit to is fighting games. Not because of any kind of time limit or anything like that, is because I just don't have the physical dexterity, or I perceive that I don't have this physical dexterity. I am wondering whether I should give it a go and sort of see if I can build up the skills in some kind of like 80s Rocky montage.
Are we talking with a fight stick or anything like this, or with the real tools, or just on a control pad?
Let's start small with the control pad, shall we?
Right. Because it might be different. I've heard it's different depending on the control you have. Actually, the fight sticks are supposed to be easier to use and stuff. The old arcade stuff that we used to all have games on when we were kids and put 10p's in. But
maybe that's an idea for a feature. Maybe I go away and give it a go and do a little write up.
Yeah. Do. I'm sure there are many people out there who'd love to hear the experiences and the differences between the two ways of controlling a game like this, and whether it does improve the technique.
Okay, so we've also had messages of support and encouragement from Stuart Garrard. So he's put, I love the idea of your show. Would be cool to get one of you on our podcast, The Renaissance Men, to chat gaming and pimp your new venture. And I think Stuart actually has been kind enough to mention the show on there and signpost anyone interested to get in touch with us. And I think very similar to Justin Knowles that we mentioned earlier, and even a few others, that I think they've really been kind of expressing their anticipation and in some instances impatience for our first instalment. And obviously we thank them for that interest, and obviously hope it can be understood that we're taking baby steps at this time, but slowly but surely, as they say.
Yeah. We'll be there. Everything needs to fall into place, and because this is such a flexible project, we need to get things sort of a little bit more solidified. And I think it'll come together nicely once, things start going one way and the other, and people got, a few regular episodes and stuff, and people get used to, what we are and how we work. So yeah, it'd be good. It'd be good to see what, or how this progresses. That's one of my curiosities, so to speak. And I'm intrigued to find out how this and how it's going to work and how things are going to be moving forward.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really valid point. Again, it's probably worth underlining that we've got such a diverse group of people together, and the collaboration is part of the joy. If we're going to be playing the games together, working alongside one another to produce an occasional podcast that can be of deemed of quality to be listened to by the listeners, then we can't ask for more. We're not going to be a weekly show simply because we don't have the time or means, and that's not really what the ambition of what it is that we're trying to do with this show. So, I mean, I just want to say we didn't mean to intentionally tease the show in any way on Twitter. It was more that is the tool we use to recruit people to the calls, and our excitement, enthusiasm of some of the team members has bubbled over on that, but that's always been well intentioned,
Well, hopefully a lot of that enthusiasm will rub off on the listeners as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a way of getting people in as well, because they can see that we're passionate about it. Hopefully they will be too, from listening and trying to contribute. And it'll be a means for them to get that, frustration or that knowledge or that enjoyment out. It'll be a nice way of bringing all this out to the surface, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think Stuart has put it best when he described this as a gestating podcast, much like the dormant face hugger in John Hurt's chest. They'll burst out soon. So we thank you for that, Stuart.
Another comment from our friend Richard Burkett, who's a games tester at Rockstar, said he only listens to a few Choice Fave podcasts nowadays, but will be the first to subscribe to us, and he thinks that Lapsed Gamer Radio sounds really interesting. He loves the name, and it'll be great to hear how we get along returning to playing games again. So, yeah. He also asked us a question. So listen to this, guys. What titles that we may have missed over the past few years are we most looking forward to giving a try now?
I've been starting to play the new, well, I say the new because it's new for me. I haven't picked up a Wii U, but the co-op Mario's like 3D world that you can play now, where it's actually two-player throughout, all of the levels that you can play along, much in the style of one of the Lego games. So that's just been like a completely phenomenal experience for me. Like having obviously grown up being a Nintendo fan and playing the Mario games, having now the opportunity to play it in local co-op with my wife, and even my son, is able, because of the unique kind of interface of the Wii U gamepad, and my son, has even been able to play with me. So that's been like fantastic, getting that kind of idea of a community together within your household again. That's something I haven't had since teenage years, that like kind of couch co-op experience.
You have to get your boy into the right frame of mind, because he is the heir to all this, Lee. So we have to get him in the right frame of mind. You're doing well.
Right, I've finally come up with an idea.
Go on.
I have lapsed many times over my lifetime in gaming, and one of the times that I lapsed was the entire Dreamcast era.
Wow.
So I'm really looking forward to getting back into stuff like Shenmue and Crazy Taxi and just anything like that I just completely missed. I missed an entire revered era of games. So yeah, going back to something that far back would be quite interesting for me to do, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, actually, because there's going to be those black holes of certain platforms for all of us, and doing like a system retrospective really sounds appealing to me. I mean, I played a Dreamcast around a friend's house. That was like my only access to it, but I never owned a PS1 nor even a PS2. So like, there's a whole games library there that I've like never even touched. So I think that would be really interesting to do that.
Yeah. For me, it's a little bit more modern than all what you guys are talking about. I think for me, it's Mass Effect. I think I have to start that again. I did sort of play the first one, but then I sort of left it and put it on the shelf and said I'll get back to it. But now I'm starting to, think maybe I should go and give it another try and give it another chance.
It will be your new Red Dead Redemption, mate. Honestly,
will it?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
I with my Xbox, my 360, when I got it, it was one of the titles that I bought because I wanted to try it out. And I only got as far as sort of, being in charge of the ship. It really didn't do much for me up to then. And then I stopped. And I don't know, I've just not been back. But now I really feel like I should really give it a chance, because I'm hearing a lot about it, and I've got all the games. But I just haven't touched them. They're just sort of sitting in cellophane in a box in the corner of the shelf somewhere, and I just haven't got back to them. And now I think is the time to do so.
That's tragic. Yeah, it's really tragic. You have to make amends for that.
I will. I'm going to give them a try. I will.
We've had a comment in from Louis Kong, and he's expressed an interest in coming on and getting involved. He's from the Ready Player 2 podcast, so a bit of quality there coming on the show and probably making us look terrible.
And actually another podcast that we mentioned that you've had involvement with, we had a nice message of support from the Digital Diaries, just saying, looking forward to hearing you guys and Gel. And another message, a podcast with reprobates such as Joey and Jake has to be a good one to listen to, and that is from Jedi Junkie, and he's also been kind enough to volunteer to come on as a future guest of ours.
Yeah. Adam Ducker. Seeing you guys popping up on Twitter, so we'll definitely be listening in. Thank you, Adam.
And finally, I should say, I've kind of collated this feedback at the last minute, so if there is anyone that I've inevitably left off, apologies for that. But the final one is from Michael McKenzie, a good close friend of mine. He says LGR sounds like a really intriguing and rewarding idea. He said that although he doesn't play many different games, as they tend to last in months and months, he would be up for guesting or getting involved in any way he can in the show in the future.
Well, thank you to all those who sent us those words of encouragement, those kind words, and hopefully we will be sitting here at this table, virtual table, discussing games and talking about game experiences together. So, as I said, this is an open, flexible show which you are all more than welcome to come and join us and comment on. So, Finally, I think the time has come. You've been listening to the Lapsed Gamer Radio, and this is a podcast, as I say, aimed at getting lapsed gamers and more active gamers together to talk about the medium of video games in an effort to re-energize and reaffirm the love for the hobby in both. I'm Joey Calvin. I've been joined by Lee Howard and Mark Ree. It's been a genuine pleasure talking to you both today, gentlemen, and we thank all of the LGR team for the incredibly positive input and efforts that they've brought to this debut transmission with their questions, and hopefully that we can move on from there. So we thank you for listening, and we hope that you keep that dial tuned into us for our next broadcast. Episode 1, official 1 of LGR, coming in roughly about a month's time. So we hope that you take up the challenge that we've set of playing the game with us, and hopefully join our first play game list or playlist game.
Kentucky Route Zero.
Yes. Mark, Lee, it's been a pleasure as always, and I'd love to see you back here again with a few other team members pretty soon, I guess.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, then no promises, but we'll do what we can. Okay.
Thanks very much for listening to LGR Radio, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Detecting life. Verify location. Good evening. Tonight has been a wonderful experiment of human contact. A symbiotic relationship between man and machine and you. The human brain is capable of millions of connections. Each one is a memory, an event. Tonight shall be remembered not by one, but by thousands of these relationships. As you leave here tonight, close your eyes and travel back to here, to now. And always remember that this was one moment. You were not alone, and you felt something that thousands of others had felt, and it was
Lapsed Gamer Radio.